In horror movies, the endless roster of ghosts and killers are supposed to be scary. We want to root for the protagonist to survive their ordeal, and as viewers, we should really care about whether they live or die. This is how we become invested in the dramatic stakes, and the best way to accomplish that is by making the characters sympathetic, at least the ones who'll make it to the end credits. However, this isn't always the case. Sometimes horror films have no sympathetic characters whatsoever. In these films, characters may be punished for heinous deeds, or filmmakers may be embracing a mean-spirited schlocky aesthetic to make a completely different kind of film. Whatever the reason, these films didn't need our sympathy to be incredible. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 awesome horror movies with no sympathetic characters. Number 10. Unfriended, 2014. Internet found footage flick Unfriended sees a group of high schoolers' night take a deadly twist when an anonymous user hijacks their Skype call, claiming to be the ghost of Laura Barnes, a classmate who killed themselves exactly 1 year earlier. The group initially believed the user to be a prank, but they soon realized the horrifying truth when the vengeful ghost begins to pick the teenagers off one at a time. As the night goes on, Laura forces the teens to admit their horrible secrets, which expose them as being even more obnoxious and self-obsessed than they initially appeared. Most egregious of all, though, is that each of the friends were directly involved in some way with Laura's bullying and death. The worst offender is protagonist Blair, who desperately appeals to Laura about how close they used to be. However, in a final twist, the ghost reveals that Blair was the one who posted the original humiliating viral video, which sparked the intense bullying that would lead Laura to taking her own life. Alongside its clever take on the found footage genre, Unfriended likewise uses its cast of truly awful teenagers to tell an all too real allegory of the horrors of cyberbullying. Number 9. MATRIARCH, 2021. From writer-director Ben Steiner, MATRIARCH follows Laura as she decides to visit her mother Celia for the first time in 20 years after she has a near-death experience following a drug overdose. When she arrives, however, she discovers that nobody in the quaint English village, including her own mother, appears to have aged since she left. What follows is a madcap slow burn tale that gradually brings the village's dark secrets to light, alongside unearthing the sinister events that shaped Laura's childhood. The bizarre and even hostile behavior of the villagers we meet makes the Hot Fuzz cult look like model citizens. However, it's Celia's shady behavior and the history of abuse which sets her apart as the most deviously evil character. And Laura isn't much better either. She's a reckless mess who continually closes herself off to those around her and would prefer to go on another all-night bender. The only seemingly caring character is Laura's childhood friend Abby, but even she, it turns out, had ulterior motives and was planning to betray Laura for her own gains. It says a lot about these characters that the most sympathetic of them all is a literal evil entity. Number 8. Piercing, 2018. Based on the novel of the same name by Ryu Murakami, Piercing takes viewers deep into the seedy underbelly of society, where we watch two disturbed characters become caught up in a taut, psychosexual game of cat and mouse. The first of these individuals is a man who has an insatiable desire to kill someone with an ice pick. He even fantasizes about murdering his infant daughter with one when we're introduced to him. He decides to satisfy his urge and meticulously plans every detail of the killing. His target is a sex worker played by Mia Wasikowska, who he lures to a hotel room under the pretense of being just another client. However, her own life has entered a downward spiral fueled by drugs and paranoia. It doesn't take long for the man's plans to go awry, and after a series of misunderstandings, neither is sure whether the other wishes to kill or sleep with them. As the chaos ensues, we likewise learn more about the man's murderous history, whilst the woman's behavior becomes increasingly violent. This flick would not have worked if we liked the characters. Number 7. Goodnight Mommy, 2014. In Austrian horror Goodnight Mommy, a mother returns home after cosmetic surgery with her face covered in bandages. However, her twin sons, Lucas and Elias, begin to suspect she's not their real mother. The mother is distant towards her children to the point that she ignores Lucas's existence entirely and angrily forbids Elias from ever talking about him again. Tensions gradually continue to grow between the boys and the suspected intruder until the final act explodes into scenes of twisted violence in which the boys cruelly torture her. However, it's revealed that Lucas has been dead this entire time, dying in an unspecified accident caused by his brother, which adds an extra layer of tragedy to this disturbing family drama. Both mother and son are struggling to cope with the death of Lucas in the worst possible way. Whereas the already troubled Elias has created a fantasy in which his brother's still alive and encourages his violent behavior, The mother copes by shutting herself away from a child who desperately needs their mother. Despite the horrible situation this family have found themselves in, it's difficult to feel sorry for any of them. Number 6. Stoker, 2013. The English language feature from Park Chan-wook, the visionary filmmaker behind Oldboy, Thirst, and Lady Vengeance, Stoker is a brooding family affair that seeps into the realms of horror as events become increasingly strange and violent. After the death of the Stoker patriarch, his grieving wife Evelyn and teenage daughter India are visited by his mysterious brother Charles, who they haven't met until now. He comes to stay with the women and manages to work his way into the family unit by seducing Evelyn. However, he and India soon become infatuated with each other, and this new relationship encourages India's dark side to come out. From how quickly Evelyn falls for Charles and forgets about her daughter, to the uncomfortable implications of his feelings towards the teenager, the entire Stoker family are colored as unsavory characters with dubious morals. The situation only gets worse when Charles's murderous past is revealed. Not only was he responsible for his brother's death, but he also killed his infant sibling when he was a child. Even the classmate who initially stands up for India against the bullies is shown to be loathsome when he attempts to assault her soon after. Number 5. The Lighthouse, 2019. At the start of Robert Eggers' claustrophobic period horror The Lighthouse, we see newly recruited lighthouse keeper Winslow arrive on an isolated island ready to start his shift under the eye of seasoned Wiki Wake. Throughout the preceding weeks, viewers will start to feel sorry for Winslow as he's overworked and undermined by his cruel supervisor, who's suspiciously protective over the lighthouse's light. When a storm rolls in that leaves the men stranded though, madness gradually sets in and a violent power struggle ensues. Between the drunkenness and hallucinations, we come to realize that both men are just as vile as each other. Not only was Wake abhorrent to his underling, but he was also planning to request Winslow's payment be withheld. Winslow's no saint either. In fact, Winslow isn't even his real name. Before he was a Wiki, he was a logger named Thomas Howard, who nonchalantly watched one of his co-workers die in an accident. He was understandably fired, so he took the name of his deceased colleague and set out to start a new life. Moreover, it was Howard's disregard for mariner superstition which caused this nightmarish situation in the first place. Number 4. ICHI the Killer, 2001. From the twisted mind of Takeshi Miike, the prolific cult icon behind Audition, Gozu, and Visitor Q, ultra-violent outing ICHI the Killer is Miike at his most ridiculous and sadistic. Adapted from the manga of the same name, this entry takes viewers to the Yakuza-ruled streets of Japan, where sadomasochistic mobster Kakihara is tasked with hunting down the one responsible for brutally killing his boss. That person is Ichi, an unstable sociopath who takes immense pleasure in watching women be abused. Despite his childlike behavior, Ichi is just as cruel as those he kills. Joining the lineup of morally bankrupt characters is Gigi, the person responsible for emotionally manipulating Ichi to be a killer for his own gains, and Karen, a femme fatale who's as sadistically cruel as everyone else. Even those subjected to Kakihara's extremely vicious means of torture that make Hostel look tame have done something deserving of their punishment. Though viewers may believe that a young boy who Ichi protects from bullies is the only character deserving of our sympathy, the ending reveals that even he too grew up to join the violent criminal underworld. Number 3. POSSUM, 2018. When former puppeteer Philip returns to his Norfolk childhood home to stay with his uncle Maurice, he attempts to rid himself of the terrifying titular puppet that's come to symbolize his lifelong trauma. However, no matter how hard he tries, the spidery puppet always finds its way back. Everything about Matt Holness's experimental horror Possum is caked in a grimy surrealism. The wallpaper in the decrepit home is peeling off, which makes the place feel like it's rotting from the inside, whereas twisted branches in the fields jut out like spider legs. Even the soundscape is atonal and dreamlike. It should come as no surprise then that the small cast of characters we encounter are as unpleasant as the setting, the worst of which is Maurice. More than a bitter old man, Maurice is the root of Philip's trauma, being responsible for years of sexual and mental abuse. Moreover, he's continued to assault young boys in the local area. Don't be fooled into thinking Philip's meek demeanor makes him entirely innocent though. From the spattering of facts that we learn about him, we can only imagine what deplorable actions he committed to earn him the description of a disgraced puppeteer. Number 2. I Saw the Devil, 2010. An intensely visceral outing from A Tale of Two Sisters director Ji-won Kim, I Saw the Devil begins with the sickening murder and dismemberment of a pregnant woman by sadistic killer Jang Kyung-chul, who then dumps the remains in a river. Unfortunately for him, the woman's fiancé is Kim Soo-hyun, a police officer who begins investigating the case, and it's not long before he uncovers the killer's identity. But instead of apprehending him and bringing him to justice, Soo-hyun decides to enact his own form of vengeance by releasing him so that he can continue to hunt and torture him. From herein, I Saw the Devil becomes a fiendish psychological game which grows exponentially more violent as the rivalry between the two men intensifies. Kyung-chul is nothing less than a monster. He brutalizes and butchers countless innocents whenever he gets the opportunity. He's even best friends with a cannibal. Normally, this kind of villain is deserving of everything they have coming to them, but not even Kyung-chul deserved this punishment. In his personal quest for vengeance, Soo-hyun becomes just as twisted, if not worse, than the man he's after, the culmination of which ends in a shocking act of cruelty. Number 1. The Neon Demon, 2016. Director and co-writer Nicholas Winding Refn takes aim at the ruthless world of the fashion industry in neon-drenched horror The Neon Demon. The plot follows 16-year-old Jessie quickly becoming the latest modeling sensation when she moves to LA. However, the competitive jealousy from her peers leads to deadly consequences. To underscore how deplorable the world of fashion is, every character Jessie encounters is just terrible. There's her agent who encourages Jessie to lie about her age, the photographer who demands she poses nude for her first shoot, and the narcissistic fashion designer who values beauty over everything else. Worse still is Jessie's older boyfriend who, aside from knowingly dating an underage girl, is only interested in her for her looks and is more interested in getting his own work noticed. Then there's Keanu Reeves' motel owner who's implied to be a predatory child killer. Though Jessie's youthful naivety initially makes her appear sympathetic, she's too consumed by the industry and becomes as cold and self-obsessed as everyone else, to the point she gloats that women would kill to look like her. The irony here being that she's killed and consumed moments later by the women she thought were her friends. That's the end of our list, but let me know down in that comment box if you can think of any other awesome horror movies that have absolutely no sympathetic characters. As always, I've been Jess from What Culture. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stick around with us here for more horror goodness.